Good morning in the afternoon. So yesterday, I got. Yes, Samira. Hi. Come on. Come here, Bubba. Come up here so you stop making the noise. Come up here so you stop making the noise. No. What began as a channel update became a Samira update. Are we good? Are we good? Say hello. I got ready to go to work yesterday, and before I went in, I spent the afternoon fixing an issue with the corner light on the truck and laboriously drilling and punching a hole through the steel of the tailgate to put in a carriage bolt so that I could use some steel clothesline cable to secure the tailgate in the up position. So that way my license plate is not covered by a tailgate and my corner light works, and there's that many fewer excuses to get pulled over while at work. So then, as I was going to pull out of the driveway, my check engine light came on, and it stayed on, which it hasn't done for a while. And then, excuse me, I turned around at the end of the road, came back and grabbed the extra money I'd made last night, or the night before, rather, and took it with me and went to AutoZone and picked up an O2 sensor because I threw the reader on real quick and I was getting a P0141, which is Bank 2 Sensor 1. Now, I changed Bank 1 Sensor 1 already, and so then I was like, okay, well, this one hasn't been physically damaged, but, you know, whatever. I've got the wrench that I used for the other one. So anyways, I got the part, washed the truck, gassed up, went in, and I was set to be there on at like 5 or 5:30, and because of having to go to the parts store and turn back around and everything, it was closer to 6. And because I wasn't on the schedule, I figured it wasn't a big deal, so I got there and I ran inside and said, hey, I got this thing I'm going to try and fix on my truck real quick, and you got other brush drivers and whatever, let them make the money and I'll be in later. And so then I went out and set about soaking this threaded thing in the exhaust pipe with PB Blaster and waiting for the exhaust pipe to cool. And maybe I should have tried to do it with the exhaust pipe warm and it would have come out. But anyways, the end result was I couldn't get the part off. Now, thankfully, I did not clip the wire to make it easier to remove the sensor because then I would have been double screwed. So I couldn't get the thing to break loose no matter what. I got a steel pick out and was picking away at the edge of where the thread is to get any rust scale off and kept soaking it with the blaster. And I just could not get the damn thing to budge. So after almost an hour of fucking around with this, I plugged the sensor back in and did the ECM reset, or ECU reset, sorry. And apparently I'd been doing this wrong the entire time. I did not realize there was an actual 10-minute wait once you unplug the battery and turn the light on. I'd only done it for about 5 minutes before. This time, when I reset the computer the proper way, that code went away and did not return. So since I didn't install the new part or anything, I think I'm going to go ahead and return it and get my money back. Shortly after I had begun trying to wrench on this, I had a conversation with a coworker who is now my 120th subscriber. Hi, James, if you're watching. Welcome to the asylum. Had a conversation with him about what was up, and then had an almost identical conversation with another coworker, and James had a question about something with his car, which we looked at later in the night. I wasn't able to answer any questions on or resolve. And then this other coworker, almost immediately his car died, and he had to park it and use the boss's vehicle. And later in the evening, I hooked the reader up to that, and it turned out he also got a P0141, as well as an issue with the EGR, which I think was P0401. And it turned out that he'd already had his EGR replaced, so he had someone to go talk to about that or whatever. And then when the delivery truck for commissary for the store arrived, he had to move his car anyway. And of course it started and moved, because that's how that goes, right? But I thought it was interesting that the both of us got the same same O2 sensor flag. So anyways, I drove the truck all night. After the initial about 45 minutes of driving it to allow the system while I was taking deliveries to relearn, it stopped acting up, and the flashing check engine light for the misfire came a lot less frequently than before. So while I initially thought that maybe changing out that sensor would be the thing that would make it run right, it probably wasn't. Anyways, yeah, so, but it ran okay. I ended up starting off at about 7:30 instead of 5 or 6, and didn't make as much money, but I made comparable for the number of hours. My amount per hour of tip and run was still pretty good. And I am intentionally not mentioning my place of employment by name, nor ever appearing in uniform. There are two reasons for this. Number one is that although it's probably very easy if you know me in person to deduce where it is, this just lessens the chance of anybody deciding they want to play games or do anything, goofy. And number two, I want to make sure that because it does have some corporate connection, it's a franchise, but there's still, corporate oversight of some sort. I want to make sure that there is no direct connection between me and this place of employment that could cause any of my opinions as stated or anything else to jeopardize my employment. I am therefore not advertising who I am, where I work, for that purpose. And on that note, moving on, got off work, came home, eating some food, petting the cats. They had missed me something fierce, and they were all just clustered around my feet in between ankles. Everybody's in heat now, apparently. It was a nice about 5 days where nobody was in heat, and now they're all yowling and mounting each other. And so anyways, scrolled through, noticed that a reaction channel that I typically respect very highly did a reaction to one of these propaganda songs for a particular medical procedure that the government really, 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 really wants you to get. And I'm not going to name the channel because I don't want to send hate that direction or anything like that from anybody else. Should anybody be watching this, be like, oh, let's get a bunch of it. No, we're not going to do that. Dude is usually really astute, already a very well-educated, learned person, living overseas. I'm going to guess English as a second language instructor for his employment. And I've been following what the White House has been putting out, and it's one of those things where people who don't pay direct attention to what the government is saying get their news from the news instead. And of course, as I've said a million times before, the news lies. It is not a conspiracy theory like, okay, when Klaus Schwab came out and talked about the Great Reset, with the Great Reset printed in bright big white letters on blue behind him, talking about utilizing a pandemic as an excuse to reset the global economy and society. That's not a conspiracy theory, even though the news will then call it that. That's called gaslighting. When don't trust your lying eyes, right? Similarly, the White House is doing something very much like it, and this is derpception, because not only are there people who are getting their news from the news that are not paying attention to what the government is saying. So when someone says, "Oh well," they're talking about censoring private text messages on your cell phone carrier. Oh no, they can't. They won't. They can't. I mean, First Amendment too, but whatever. Constitutional violations aside, this is directly spoken by the White House press secretary. This is the spokeswoman for the executive branch, and therefore basically for the government on a federal level, has said, yes, that is what they're doing. So no, it's not a conspiracy theory. Trust your lying eyes, right? But the justification being given, and I'll get back to the reaction channel. There's a point to this. The justification for the door-to-door information, which is actually cataloging a database. And again, this is in their own words from the actual spokesperson, the spokeswoman for the White House. This is not Alex Jones said it. And if you're going to say that, remember that dude is running like 95% accuracy these days or better. Basically, the only time he's inaccurate is if he forgets what the keywords of a search criteria are to be able to go find what he's talking about, and they can't find it. And then after about 5 minutes of fumbling around with the Boolean, then they're like, oh, I found it. It was this word instead of this word. And he goes, my bad. It's a lot of things to keep in your head. So, yes, they are talking about parsing and censoring text messages. It's already happened. This was happening in what I would guess is kind of a beta experimental, unacknowledged phase. As far back, I think it's about 6 to 10 months ago that people started reporting that they would, they had Facebook messages that were being sent that were being deleted and not seen. And you get some times where your internet connection will drop and you can't send a text and it's just a particular text. And if you delete it, then your connection comes back up. It's the same thing with YouTube comments. This is what I would refer to previously when I had my Facebook as the red bar retry phenomenon, that certain topics would be like, oops, we failed to post your post. Would you like to retry? Well, when you hit retry, it doesn't repost shit. So if you can't remember what you typed, good luck. So they've talked about doing this with text messages, and of course the thing is that who determines what is the truth? Who, when they say we're going to be preventing the spread of misinformation, by whose definition is what misinformation? So let's give an example of the gaslighting of what constitutes misinformation. And then I will tie it back around to this reaction channel, time willing. And if it doesn't work out for time, then I will just make a separate one explaining the thing with the reactor. But I would like to have it all in one update. So the excuse given for the parsing of private cell phone provided text message data, not WhatsApp, not Facebook Messenger, not privately owned corporations' email service, but your text messages on your phone, what is effectively regulated as a utility. That's like, we're going to prevent your service that you pay for from functioning properly because we do not believe that this information is correct. That is a real scary, about that far away from shutting your lights or your water off for disagreeing. Keep in mind, they've already said as well, not a conspiracy theory. This comes from the Michigan Attorney General and I think their Secretary of State and their state police, that they're going to be going door to door regarding the election and people that have been promulgating what they consider to be misinformation, even though there is a lot of hard facts at this point now to back up the truth of it. Effectively, whatever they decide you're disagreeing about that they don't like, they're going to come for you on some aspect of it, which is how you get political prisoners. This is how you get gulags. This is how 100 million people were killed under Mao Zedong and Joseph Stalin. Those people that died did not get sick. Those people that died did not do risky or dangerous behaviors that literally endanger their lives, other than the risky and dangerous behavior of being a dissenter. And I don't have a quote ahead of me or anything, but there's some people who have said some things about how healthy it is to be able to dissent. So, who determines what, right? The justification for this is that people are dying. We need more people to get the medical procedure. And we're going door to door to give information, and we're going to be, it turns out they have a list of 12 people that members of White House staff are monitoring actively and reporting their posts. It's like GHEY, gay ops. It's a form of organized harassment in essence, which, by the way, is a federal felony. If anybody's watching this that has access to some attorneys that are willing to take cases like that, that is a federal felony to organize against someone for the purposes of electronic or real-world harassment. That is effectively gang stalking. So the justification is people are dying. And so me, being the compelled to logic, been fooled so many times, I've forced myself to condition into permanent critical thinking, said, hey, let's go look up some numbers. And on the day that the White House put out the statement, the average daily deaths in America due to that virus came up to about 273. Now, what that means is that they go back 13 days, and of the 13 days, and it's a rolling period, so it changes day by day. So this is technically old data. According to their graph, the curve is going back up. However, I'm not sure about that because I have not taken their number of deaths and correlated it with current number of infections or anything. And honestly, most of the mortality information doesn't come out for a year or two. So taking them at their word for the sake of argument, the rolling 13 days, the total number of deaths divided by the number of days gives you an average daily death rate. An average is, after all, a group of numbers, and you divide that group of numbers. Say you have let's do something quick and easy. Let's say you've got a 5, a 5, a 10, a 20, a 5, and a 5. That totals up to 50, and you divide by the total number, which is 5 instances. Oh no, that's 6, sorry. So it's that's bad math. What am I doing? Okay, so basically what it is, we'll say you've got a 5, a 10, a 20, a 5, and a 5. All right? And this comes to 45. You got 5 total numbers. You divide the total together, which is 45, by 5. That's 9. Therefore, the average is 9, right? We were supposed to learn this in school. But there are people that you talk about averages and they're like, well, what do you mean? And that's an unintended pun because mean is another word for average. So among a 13-day rolling period to present, from 13 days back, the total number of deaths every day added together divided by 13 for the number, which it's funny because 13 is the number of death, right? The average at that time that this was coming onto the news, maybe a day after it was said, was 273. Out of a population of approximately 350 million people. And I didn't even bother trying to divide 273 into 350 million to find out what percent that mortality is. But it's what you could call statistically non-existent. 273 people, it's like that Doctor Who, is that a lot? Well, $273 when you're broke? Yeah, that's a lot of money. It's more than I've got on me right now. 273 people dying out of 350 million? Not so much. So their justification is that people are dying. 273 people per day on average in a country of 350 million. And they're using that to justify constitutionally violating invasive surveillance and censorship. And it is real government censorship at that point. When the government is working with the private companies, but my private company, but they're telling them to do it, that is still censorship. Because it's not literally the government as this abstract entity. It'll say, the government, and here's this item, right? That then censors silence. No, that's not how it works. They can come to your office and say, stop doing that, or they can come to your boss and say, stop them doing that. There is no difference. So justifying all of this based on such an absolutely ridiculously minuscule number, anybody with half a brain, a functioning brain cell, should be able to see what that means. So this reaction channel, I got about 7 or 8 minutes, I think, on this timer. I think I'll try and get through it before that runs out. This reaction channel did the Juvenile remix of Back That Thing Up, which I seem to recall it was Back That Ass Up. And he kept it short. He saw the title and was like, oh my God, what is this? No, this can't be, no. And then immediately said, look, folks, if you don't like this, what this song is or anything like that, don't dislike my video. That affects my channel. If you're liking the video, it's because you like my channel, not because you like the content. Well, that's not actually true. From a technology standpoint, that is not how the algorithm works. It is based on topic of content. So the thing is, if you thumb it down, that means you will be shown less of that. If you thumb it up, you will be shown more of it. The only thing to do then, to avoid the request not to thumb it down, because some people care about those downvotes, as, you know, I can't have that. Personally, if somebody gives me a downvote, at least they interacted with it. No, yeah, if it ends up ratioing to 50-50 or more down, then it's like, man, really? But it literally was a, please don't cancel my channel for not liking this video. Hit the first note and then paused it and said, oh my God, it really is just a remake of it. No, I'll say real quick of the actual song itself, having now heard it. Talk about phoning it in. Sounded like Juvenile was just reading it off of a card in the studio. There is no passion. There is no nothing. He was obviously getting paid to do it. This reactor specifically paused on one scene with this look on his face, with Juvenile with a look on his face, and said, that, folks, is called a shit-eating grin. So this reaction channel, this reactor had noticed how cheesy and bad this was, recognized as a very intelligent, well-read person. This is a guy that will listen to a Tool song and doesn't have to look up what stuff means and goes, oh, because I read about this and that means that. Like, this dude already knows. It's been really brilliant. But the reactor then, after the song, went on to talk about the fact that he himself had been vaccinated, everyone in his house would be vaccinated, that he does not believe that there's any hoaxery or anything else to it, because at his house in Spain, every other house on his block is empty now, and all those people had died from the virus. Immediately, from the other side of his mouth, said, I don't want to hear in the comments about your anecdotal anything to do with the virus, stateside or anything else. I know what I've seen. But what he just did was anecdotal. And his reasoning for getting the vaccine was, I don't want to die. But I just mentioned that average mortality, right? A well-read and intelligent person, you would think, would dig into that. I don't want to be like, do your research, because the Q-tards have ruined that for me and everyone else that does actual research, that digs into peer-reviewed study and doesn't just go to the fucking Neon Nettle or whatever and say, no, see, I saw it right there, I read it, it must be true. Those people are the ones that give people like me a bad name for being right. Give other people that are trapped in the mind control an excuse to say, oh, well, you saw it on YouTube, it must be true. Don't believe everything you see on Facebook. Facebook was just a medium through which you were supposed to be able to share information with others. To say, hey, check this out, right? And people getting co-opted by counterintelligence propaganda ruined that for the rest of us, whose actual goal was to spread real truth and information, even if it went against what the people on the TV were saying. The whole point was to try and wake up the people who are glued to the TV. This reactor then says, I'm not going to judge or hate people on their decisions, and you do what you want and whatever, and that's fine. And he says even living and existing at this point is political, which, while the topic has been politicized, having an opinion on something is not inherently political. Even if you and someone else disagree on something, and that disagreement becomes a debate or a dialogue or an argument, does not make it political. Political has to do specifically with governance. Now, you can call it politicking, where two people wrangle back and forth, but this is more about persuasion than it is about ideas, opposing ideas, agreeing ideas. This is like the person that said that what I was saying was political when what I was saying was simply statistical and factual. It is not political to cite mortality statistics. It is political to say this is this side's fault or that side's fault. See back to the other video I had about this song is called Wake the Fuck Up or We're All Going to Die. I'm about to run out of time, so I will continue this.